Today we're here with Chad of Energy Equine and Synergy Equine, and we're going to talk about things like why you want to be like McDonald's, the hidden threat to the vet industry, the power of sacrifice, the keys to a great culture, why being a yes person is required for success, the power of celebration, and most importantly, what you can learn from the world's greatest golfer.
I'm Dennis.
And I'm Greg,
And this is the More Profit, Less Stress podcast.
where we provide the tools for more profit and less stress in your business now so you can turn into a valuable asset later. Welcome to the More Profit, Less Stress podcast. I'm Greg Forzani here with Dennis Taekema. And our guest today is Chad Hewlett from Energy Equine just north of Calgary, Alberta, and Synergy Equine just south of Calgary, Alberta. Chad, if you can take well, first of all, welcome, but if you can take a minute and just sort of give us a big picture of what is Energy and Synergy Equine for the audience so they understand, and give us a little bit of information about the clinics.
Thanks for having me, by the way, Greg and Dennis. I really appreciate the opportunity to be on your podcast, so thank you very much. We're two veterinary clinics focused primarily on equine performance horses, so doing sports medicine. We have one surgeon who does surgery 3 days a week out of the North Clinic, and we have 8 full-time sports medicine focused veterinarians, and then Jason, surgeon, is our 9th. He does some sports medicine as well. We have 2 interns that work through our program. Both of them are licensed veterinarians that have come to gain more knowledge in the sports medicine field and to spend time with mentorship. And then we have a support staff that helps us out of the 2 clinics, and we have 6 portable clinics that travel throughout the area and around the province and look after horses. Our primary practice area is about 100 miles around Calgary, and then we travel the province for events and different things like that too. So
It's actually, I find it really interesting. You used the word sports quite a bit there. Probably not a lot of people think of horses as athletes, right?
yeah, that's
So true.
yeah.
Like when you said sports medicine, I was like, yeah, but that actually makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
But it didn't.
Yeah, and if you kind of look, like, we've been through different branding things, but right on the door of all our trucks, it says facilitating sports medicine and horses, right? Equine sports medicine. That's been sort of the dictum ever since I left the racetrack, is that I wanted to be involved with horses that were in competitive endeavors. I've always been involved with Western sports because I grew up on a ranch in Iowa. When I moved here, I did Calgary Stampede, like rodeo horses and stuff like that, and did a bunch of cutters, cow horses. We were always in on that Western performance. But I've enjoyed the dressage and the jumping and the hunters, the 3-day eventing. We have some driving clients that are international level in the draft horse driving competitions. The sports sort of thing kind of just allowed us to look at all those different things, right? So yeah, but it's a neat sort of industry to be involved in. A lot of the things that we're doing, you would get done if you went to a sports medicine specialist on the human side. Some of it we're even ahead of them just based on need inside of the industry and some of the regulatory things that are a little bit kinder, I guess, way to say it. If I say softer, that'll sound like they're letting shit happen, but it's not. It's kinder. We say that. So yeah. Yeah.
Maybe more in the best interest, of the athlete.
Yeah. There's you just think, and just like you talk about stem cells and amniotic matrix and stuff like that, which are all these regenerative things. We're using that weekly, daily. Whereas on the human side, there's been a struggle in Canada to get that, right? Like, I'm not saying it's not happening, but it's dang sure more difficult.
It's actually kind of funny listening to you talk about this. Only because when you say, like, when I think equine sports, I think jockeys, cowboys, that kind of stuff. Those are the guys that should be getting the sports medicine. And then you start saying things like draft horses, cutting horses. I'm like, yeah, of course, that's all part of it. But the brain just doesn't compute the two, because I've never stopped to consider it that way at all.
Yeah. Well, you know what's really cool is, like, you have Spruce Meadows here too, right? So when we sort of underplay a little bit, like, they're 50 years old this year, right? And I've not had a tremendous interest in being there, but we've worked on a lot of horses that go there, and it's not been a primary focus. It is becoming more and more of a focus for us, how we focus on those international level horses. But the Europeans fly in, the Mexicans fly in, the South Americans fly in. Germany, Britain, the Dutch horses, like, they come in for these events, and so these planes land in Calgary with these horses is, I don't know, $25,000 or $30,000 to fly a horse in for 5 or 6 weeks, and wow, sometimes 2-3 weeks, right? And then they turn around and they fly them to Florida or they fly them to California, and so they do live that sort of international, like, soccer player lifestyle,
Right.
I guess, is that the way to say that, or like a baseball
Right.
team, where the athletes, the horses, get on an airplane and fly places. They drive them in trailers too more often, but I just think, yeah, if you want to compare it back and forth, those are the levels, right? And then they have, with all the testing and the different things that have come about, it's no different than the Olympic Committee when it comes to drug withdrawals and specifications for them as well, right?
Do they do drug testing on horses? Like, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
your horse has got way too much steroids. We have to
Yeah.
qualify.
Yeah, no, it's a real thing, and it has been since they started. Yeah, so you have your publication through FEI and through Sport Canada, through Canadian Federation of Equine, and they have all their different testing levels. CPMA, which is Canadian Pari-Mutual Association, post all their withdrawals so you know what's going on from the standpoint of being careful with what you can do and what you can't do. Yeah, and it's all about looking after the capability to be responsible for the horse's health and sport, so that if there's an injury or a breakdown or whatever, it's was going to happen. It wasn't because there was some sort of held up pharmaceutically that shouldn't have been, propped up horses on pharmaceuticals that shouldn't have been.
I can imagine it's not really any different than human competition if I think about it. If there's money involved, there's bound to be people that want to cheat or push the limit or go too far or do whatever it takes to get the money, right?
Yeah, we all like to win. Let's be real. And that's been one of my dictums from the beginning. It's like way back before I met Greg, my first business coach. We sat down to talk, and he's like, "What is it that you do?" I was like, "Well, what do you mean? I'm a doctor." He says, "Well, why do people come to you?" I said, "Because they want to beat their friends." And he's like, "What?" And I was like, "Yeah, they want to beat their friends." I was like, let's be real. We're not.
That's awesome.
These aren't their pets. They're pets, so to speak, right? Like, I mean, we love them and we care for them a lot, but shit's serious, right? Like, I love it. I love being competitive. I have my own entire life, right? Like, I played baseball from the time I was a kid. My parents had a rodeo company when I was little, and I love the thrill of, like, competition but it was a hard one to admit to because I'm supposed to be a doctor, and it's like, well, what do you do? I was like, I help people beat their friends, right? But it's on healthy horses, right? Like, that's what we're trying to do. It's
Right.
like, we want to do this without destroying, we want to destroy 2 or 3 stock cars before we win the race, right? Like, we want to start on the same horse, and we would like it to be very healthy and have a great life, right? And so, or many horses have a great life, yeah. And people would enjoy beating their friends, right? So.
Horses are incredible athletes. I did a little survey on your opinion, who's the greatest athlete ever, and got all these different answers, like from boxers to baseball players to whatever. And let a whole bunch of people answer for a couple of days, and then I was like, well, in my opinion, you can't even argue it. The goat of all goats, without question, hands down, is Secretariat. Like, it's not even debatable. You can't argue it. Like,
Ridiculous. Yeah, ridiculous how that horse dominated all those fields and just yeah, pretty impressive. Yeah, I don't do any racing anymore, but I would agree with you on that side of things, right? As far as in that realm,
won all 3 Triple Crown races, still holds the record time in all 3, and the gap of which Secretariat won by was total dominance forever.
and the influence on the pedigree when you look at the mare side. As far as like how they're keeping mares, it's almost impossible to look through and not find that breeding in some of these horses.
Yeah,
Again,
you're right.
We're not necessarily going to do that in the human side of things. Maybe we should, but like they definitely breed. Their selection was for that.
There's a lot of athletes done a lot of breeding in a lot of places. And I don't see all their kids playing pro sports. There's maybe 1 or 2, but
Well, but the difference between pro athletes and horses is that horses get paid to procreate. Athletes have to pay when they procreate because it's called child support and alimony. So, like, if the athletes got paid to procreate, different story.
Yeah, and if we're gonna go and get in trouble, the mare population isn't near as receptive to it either. I don't think so. So you gotta be careful with that. So yeah, it's a different deal. It's a different deal. Yeah.
That's hilarious.
I feel like I'm on an episode of
Yeah.
Gutfeld.
Yeah. Well, if they, what was that? What was that old saying with Red Green Show? It's like if the women can't find you handsome, they should find you handy. Well, if they can't find us handy, they ought to at least be able to find us are funny today, maybe, or entertaining.
Maybe.
So we'll stay with that. If there's no information of super value, maybe it'll just be entertaining.
So, so with everything you've been through, so let's get onto topic then. So with everything you've been through, you said you had a coach before. What made you reach out for help again?
Move the needle. And then I'll try not to say that term too much, but it's just a thing that's on my mind every single day. Is the needle moving in the direction that I want?
Great term.
Dead, or is it going in the direction I don't want? And obviously you need to stop the things when the needle's going in the wrong direction. You know, a lot of times we get in those holding patterns because life is happening around us and we get caught up in it, so we just stay with the needle there. And then when you get a chance to turn your mind and really focus on moving that needle in the direction you want, all the coaching's done that for us, like, to be honest with you, right? And got us started in the right direction. I think the one thing that really is appreciated about what you guys do is numbers don't lie, right? And so we talk about numbers a lot. And it's just like me talking about wanting to beat their friends. It's like when you run on a barrel pattern, there's a number. And if that number isn't the lowest number, you're the loser, right? Does that make sense? Like, and so I think, you know, when you just look at it from this standpoint, like, I don't always like the numbers that Nancy puts in the computer and we have to report to Greg. But just like in that barrel pattern, if I don't know what my number is, it can't get any better. And so I think that's, if I'm going to be, you know, I try to bring it down to one thing, is just the fact that you guys you're hard on the numbers, and that's how we're going to get there, right? I've been with programs where we do a lot more of the softer stuff. I believe the soft stuff is important, and we need to keep it there, right? But it needs a number at the end of the day too. You know, just like I was just watching the tool on marketing, and one of the things that said inside of there is, you know, like, what I love is like, and we're getting ready to figure this out with Greg this next week, is how much does it cost to get a new client, right? And then where do we look at that marketing? How do we put that together? Okay, well, marketing's more of a soft skill or soft part of business, but it also needs a number, right? And so then, yeah, that'd be the big thing. I'm not gonna lie, of all the people that I've worked with, Greg, you're the only one that actually ran a business. That's the other side of it too. And I'm on Dennis's side. I don't know Dennis as well, right? Like, so Dennis, maybe you run a business too. And I feel bad that I haven't had a conversation with you to discover it. But I think that was one of the things that was a little bit hard for me sometimes, is taking coaching and the person's never had to really eat what they kill. I mean, running a coaching business, okay, that's a business too. But could you sell some widgets or something too? You know, like, can you relate to me on that side? And that, I'm not saying coaching's not a business, but I think it's one thing to just be like, I'm a business coach and that's all I've ever done. It's another thing to be like, I ran a business, it was successful. And I love Greg's deal of like, I got an EBITDA, you know, like all those kinds of things. Cause then I'm perked up. I'm like, oh yeah, EBITDA, I know about that. And I know about this and I know about that. And how did it sell? Was it something that I took from 100,000 and I sold it for $1 million? I could learn from somebody like that, right? Like, I think those are things that I see from your program that I greatly appreciate.
Thank you for saying that. I love you brought this up. Just, I'll speak for myself, but I think Dennis agrees with this. Two things. One, I don't think a business can be a high performer. So when I say high performer, I don't mean like you're doing $1 trillion a year in revenue and making 2% profit. I mean a high performer, like your net profit percent is a high percentage number. So no matter what size of business, high performer. I don't think a business can get there and sustain it, especially big businesses, without someone on the ownership or management team or advisory team having experienced like a crash, a difficult time, something where it's like they hit rock bottom, they really had to take a step back and change their decision-making paradigm, because it's too easy as humans to get in that rut of getting complacent, I guess, right? Like, things are okay, you get complacent, and then you don't see the warning signs that can gradually, like the frog in the boiling water scenario, right? You don't see the warning signs of things gradually kind of creeping up on you, and then boom, it slaps you in the face, and it's really hard to recover from. So The reason I say that is I also believe that I think to part of what Dennis and I bring to the table is having lived through some stuff like that. Part of our job's also to make sure that we see the warning signs and we don't let the complacency happen. Companies can say, hey, I'm making 7% profit after my fair market wage, which, by the way, for the record, in some industries, that's a good number. So let's put that aside for a sec. But in most industries, that's kind of a average or below average number. Like it's not a great number, let's say, not a healthy number in most industries. For us, that's like, hey, if you're in that number, no, that's not fucking okay. We got to do something to get the number really okay, because one, then if something happens like a pandemic or I don't know, bad weather season, or for you, Stampede gets closed for the year or something like that, right? Then it doesn't impact you. And then the other thing is it drives the value of your business down the road. Like, see, this is something I really, really, really appreciate and enjoy working with you and Nancy, because you got your eye on the ball and that ball is the end game. Like, yes, you want to do all these things along the way and make money and develop your team and help people and help athletes, and that's all fantastic, but also you got your eye on that end game, which is building an asset. If I'm going to do all this work, I'm going to build an asset, right? Like, that's so to be able to do all that, we got to be able to look for those warning signs and say, no, we're getting complacent there. We got to do something about that. So that was a long-winded reply, but I think that's super important with what we're talking about.
Yeah. And and before we started with coaching, like, or let's say you're coaching, we were just all over the map, right? Like I was just happy to get through the year and pay myself the number that I thought was worthy of a horse doctor with 15 years of experience that was running his own business, right? I was just paying myself to have an expensive job, right? Like, and we would, have some money left over, and we didn't understand what we were doing. We didn't have targets or outcomes, like ahead of schedule. So those things just really changed the game. Honestly, we went from, we were just talking about the clinics at the beginning. I was working out of the back of a pickup truck, and I had a person, I got a animal health technologist who was a brilliant animal health technologist, and I had a part-time person in the office. And so you can kind of run that off the back of your envelope, and as long as you don't do anything too stupid, like break your leg or fall down or piss every second customer off, you can make a living doing that, right? But every time I went away, I was giving my customers to the competition on the other side of the road, right? And then to go try and add other veterinarians. Kind of when we got about to 5 people, I was losing my mind. I couldn't keep up with it, didn't know where things were, didn't have systems in place. That's kind of like, if we look at the changes and the lessons and the things that we've learned along the way, there's a system. I don't know. I just the other day we were talking about the trucks, and Kayla, the lead tech, head tech, and she was our surgery tech. We called them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I think it was, like these trucks, right? And then it would be Chad's truck, or it would be Travis's truck. And we were trying to get away from that, because what would end up happening is if Chad didn't have his truck, he was in a shitty mood, right? Like, but you can't have that, right? Like, you need to know that you could take truck number 2 and you'd be fine, right? But so she changed it all to colors. So now I drive blue truck or orange truck or green truck, and it's not my truck, it's that truck. And all the equipment that goes in it has blue duct tape or red duct tape or orange or whatever. And then in the schedule, it just, your columns lit up with that, right? But I just laughed, because I was like, well, that's a Greg system. You know what I mean? Like, where we just did these, put these systems together so that we can default to that. So we basically lowered the stress of our people by lowering the stress of the veterinarian, And our veterinarians, a little bit hard sometimes, because they teach you in medicine that there's like every different way to do things, and you shouldn't try to be like McDonald's, because that'll ruin your medicine. And I'm like, no. Actually, the more we're like McDonald's, the better our medicine gets, because the clients get the same service over and over again, right? And so we've worked on that, right? Those are things that have come about since we started working with you guys.
I love what you just said. A lot of people would think, okay, we need to be unique to the vet, or in sports, you would, like professional sports, you'd say unique to the athlete. And I get it. Each athlete has their nuances. I totally get it. However, there's a reason in pro sports, anybody who follows sports, there's a reason certain teams are dynasties for a long period of time. There's a reason, right? Like Manchester United and Man United in soccer, or
Crimson Tide at
yeah,
Alabama.
exactly. You got it. Yeah. So and you can list so many examples. Like there's hockey teams, there's baseball teams, there's football teams, and they all get athletes coming in and out, but they figured out a way to systemize some things. You don't have to, like, you got to give unique traits to athletes and employees, totally. Let them shine for sure.
Yep.
But the more you can systemize, like you're talking about, the better chance you got of that dynasty. And that's really cool that you just recognized that and went against the grain in your industry and realized, hey, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. We do actually need to systemize this so that, and again, just from a care perspective, like, holy crap, if I'm an athlete or if I'm a horse and one vet's really good at the way they do this, another vet's really good at the way they do that, don't I want them learning from each other and then systemizing what the best practices are? Like, don't I want that as an athlete? Or for that matter, if I'm just trying to take care of my horse from a health perspective, don't I want that? Like, yeah, that's
you
really good
you want the
insight.
freedom to investigate the new things as they come, right? Like we don't want to close our mind. We want to be open to the new things that are coming. But the things that are working, we just need to lean into them and let them be what they're going to be. Make sure we do those. And that's the best practice. And there's no reason that a clinic can't sit down, or I'm just going to say a clinic, but let's just say the salesmen at our place are veterinarians, okay? And so the salesman can all sit down and be like, okay, here's what we want, here's what we got to sell. Let's just come up with the systems that work best, and then let's just sell that way, right? Like, and I know that's seems oversimplified, but that's really what we're trying to do. Is like, if someone else is doing something better than I'm doing, like I say it all the time. Like my one young veterinarian, Andrea, she's brilliant, and so what she does is she does two things. She comes in the room, and it doesn't matter how the day's going. She's eye contact and a smile right away. I was like, I could learn from that. So I'm going to try that, right? Like big soft eyes and a smile.
That's cool.
I don't know anybody that doesn't like that, right? And it doesn't matter if you're a girl or a boy, you like that, right? And so I think just being able to like realize when there's a power that somebody has, and then just trying to systematize it, right? Or weave it into everybody's, not make it fake, but make it real, right? And, you know, if we look at we just talked about this too. So, you know, one of my passions is the competition changed from my neighbors to my neighbors overseas, like corporate. And so you don't think that they're not looking for systems. And if you're trying to sell to them and be a part of that, and when they buy you, which they are buying they're buying us up like crazy, they're going to make their systems, and you're going to be following them because you're working for Walmart now, right? Or you're working.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that. I want to be careful not to make Walmart mad at me, but it's like you're working for the man or the woman or whoever it is, right? Because they're going to be calling the shots. Because they're writing the checks, and at the end of the day, you might think that you, the practitioner, pays the bills, and you do. But if push comes to shove, we know where the money is, and that's who's going to be driving this thing. And that's part of the reason that I really don't want us to let go of our industry. And I feel like financial responsibility and ownership responsibility is a part of our industry. That if we lose touch with that and we lose control of that, we'll ultimately lose control of our medicine. And I don't know if they hear me, and maybe I'm just Paul Revere barking up the wrong tree and riding the wrong horse, you know, and I'm in the wrong neighborhood. I'm not sure. But in my heart, I feel that that's something that's a concern for me is how do we continue to be good small business people, right? And own our industry and be able to direct the kind of medicine that we deliver, the services that we deliver, and pick those based on the medicine that we want to practice. So anyway,
I love
digress
that.
And I get on a soapbox.
No. It's good. So two things I want to say. One, react to what you just talked about is, like, I think Dennis will agree with this, but we believe that small businesses are usually, better at their product or service. Like they just, the results of their product or service are usually better. However, they're getting their ass handed to them by the corporations, but we'll just say big companies that are funded by they're primarily owned by the funds. And those bigger companies may not be as good at the product or service, meaning as good for the customer, but they have more business acumen, which is the point you're trying to make. So yeah, we're hot on, we're hot on the warpath, and it sounds like you are too, to make sure that let's give the small business that business acumen. So not only do they stand a fighting chance, they actually stand a chance to win. And I want to go back to something you said a minute ago, because you'd said earlier, no matter what you're doing, try and attach a number to it. So you talked about the team learning from each other, right? And you talked about the team being the salespeople, the vets. Well, just take that example. Like, people listening to this podcast may not realize you can attach a number to that. And the number is, if you look at all your vets and they all have different average transactions or different, say, units or services per transaction. So that would be an indicator of how good a job they're doing talking to the customer in the customer's best interest about the different things that are available in the best interest of the horse. So the better job some are doing, they'll sell more services or more products, or their average transaction will be higher, right? And the ones that aren't doing a good job will be lower. So your number on that, back to your point, if you got to attach a number, if that number between the top performer and the bottom performer is big gap, that affects their commission on the bottom because they get paid commission, but also affects the company's health. If we can get everybody systemized doing it in a similar successful way, then the gap between the high performer and the low performer closes, which increases the low performer's revenue, commission. It increases the clinic's revenue. But then the high performers will start learning some of the things the low performers might be doing well, which then increases the whole thing as well. So back to your point about all of this, you got to find that way to drill it back to a number, a performance, a dashboard, whatever that is. That's a great example.
Yeah. And we, to the credit of our practice manager, Louisa, we sit down monthly with our people, with our veterinarians, and go through their numbers, and we have defined numbers that objectively let them know how they're going to eat, right? Like, and I mean that literally, right? Because like, we have a pro sal. We feel like that everybody should have the chance to have a safety net. If you're going to fall down, it's nice to know that the group's there to help you. But at the same time, your part of the safety net is to provide your income so that the rest of us have a safety net, right? And so you kind of have that big deal. So it's just coming around that, it just allows us to look at those numbers. One of the things that's on the radar screen for this next year, like, not to get into what we should be talking about in our coaching sessions, but is I want to get to the point where we have 2 or 3 numbers for all of our people, and we can use those little mini dashboards. We're getting closer. It's been a goal for a while, and I've fallen down, but we want to get to that point so that other people can understand how they're contributing, because they're on a salary, and then they get bonus checks. And we believe in bonuses to our people as well, based on being in the organization, and not necessarily that bonus is set up so everybody gets the same bonus. Nancy and I get the same bonus check as our admin team, as the non-owners. Like, we try to do some rewarding across the whole organization, but I want to be able to look at how individuals can be rewarded as well as motivated around their own success, because there's the individual inside the organization, and we just haven't gotten there yet on some of those.
And that's who you want working for you, someone that thrives in that environment, right? Someone that responds to that. Love it.
Yeah, if there's 3 words that I can use to describe the kind of culture we want, I mean, we definitely have our core values, but the words that come up for me more and more is really want highly engaged people that are accountable and they believe they should perform, right? Because if I can get those 3 qualities and they're on the right side of history as far as like how they do things, right? Like, they're not trying to do things illegally, inhumane, or immorally, right? Like, you can't beat that when you have a team that has those 3 things where they come from, if they're living by our core values, right? Through that. And I think numbers help that. I think they help you be more engaged. I think they definitely present an accountable thing. And at the end of the day, if the number was, what was this, Henry Ford, when he came in, you probably heard this story, the night crew had built like 4 Model Ts or Model As or whatever it was. And so he wrote a 4 on the floor, right? And they came in there, what's that? Oh, the last crew did 4. well, we're going to do 5, right? Like, there's something about that, it's real, and so, I know I'm staying in the rabbit hole on these numbers, but it's been such a big part of it for us to move to. And if we look at what our life is like now compared to how it's kind of came along, there's been a big part of that that's been changed by these systems, but also putting the numbers with the systems. Those two things have been a big part of it. And I remember the first time around when we were coaching with you, I think I thought a lot about culture, and I would bring that up, and you would sort of, I don't like the word brush it off, but you'd be like, well, it's important, but if you use the numbers the right way, the culture will develop appropriately if you use the numbers appropriately. But somewhere in there, in all my intelligence, okay, I'm going to use that in parentheses because I'm a doctor, because sometimes the most intelligent people, as my dad would say, are some of the dumbest ones out there, right? And so in my intelligence, I missed that whole conversation around how that culture would develop, right? And so, yeah. So, yeah, it's just kind of neat how
really good
one
advice
thing
what you
leads to
just
another.
said.
Well, I don't think it's about being unintelligent. I think what it comes down to, it's what you're trained to look at, right? By the time you're done veterinary school, there's a lot of numbers you're trained to look at when it comes down to the performance of whatever specialty you're trying to get into. Then once you're in that specialty, you're digging deeper into that specialty to become really, really good at that specialty, and you start to understand the performance metrics behind a horse probably better than sometimes the owners of those horses do, because you're looking at those numbers all the time. I think the difference is that when you get into business, no one ever sits down to teach you what to look for, look at, or why. And so then then someone who knows more than you comes at you and starts using really big terms and says things like P&L and revenue and EBITDA and all of these things, and you go, I understand. Meanwhile, you don't have a clue because no one's actually said, well, here's how you break out this component and why it's important. Yeah, culture is great, but if you actually track this, you can see the impact. And so I'm actually seeing you take all of the discipline you learned in veterinary school and say, but the discipline is the same. I just need to learn how it applies to the business, not to the horse.
Yeah, and the reward for the services is like if you can have 10 people doing work that's similar, your impact is incredible on the medicine that you can have. And at the same time, you get the reward of the financial side of it too for the people inside the organization, because they're going to get paid better. They're going to have a better lifestyle. Like our veterinarians work 4 days a week. So there's a spin-off there of like all the things that can come from it. And I believe sometimes when we're talking from ownership to like working inside the business, sometimes I think people believe that if ownership is receiving handsome rewards for being the owner, that they must be taking something from the people. And I'm not saying that's always happening, but I think there's a way you need to do things to be like, no, if it's not good for you, it sure as hell isn't good for us, right? Like, and I think that's where Dennis was coming from there. What I love is like, the better you're educated on the numbers, and the things like knowing the P&L and understanding that if we're just scraping by and the business isn't making any money, you don't get a new DR. And we're not going to be able to afford to keep, sometimes our inventory runs $250,000, $300,000. Well, if I can't afford to keep that inventory, then you can't provide the medicine that you want. You're going to be limited by it. And I think, and just, how do we want to pay bonuses for rewards? Well, we're going to eat what we kill, right? And so if we're not killing real well, there won't be a lot to eat. And I think just trying to get that to come around and mix that in there, that lack of education, without getting into a rabbit hole, because I know we're all on the same fence as far as like, maybe education is the problem, right? Like, let's be real. Like when we look at it, I'm not going to go there, but it is, right?
It is a problem.
At some level, it's teaching that there's a cookie and everyone's going to get their fair chunk no matter what they do.
Right.
Well, the big news is it does not work that way when you get out into the field and you are now practicing as a practicing veterinarian. No one comes to us and says, "Oh, Chad, you're going to get $1 million and you just get to light it on fire this year, however you want." No one says that, right? And I think it's a huge realization when you think about it from an education standpoint. Highly educated individuals go to school when they're 5 years old and they graduate and get their first real job when they're 25 or 26. So they've been sitting inside of a academic institution for 20 years. and their mind's been molded, that's the term I'm going to use, okay, to a certain extent by that. And now I'm trying to teach, I'm this old guy who's been in practice for 30 years and watched some things light on fire and has been to the wall and been down to turning my telephone off, truck payments not made, like trying to pay 2 lawyers at the same time, can't remember what appointments I've made, you know, like, and I'm not saying that from a victim standpoint. It's just like, those are the things that you do. Like you said, sometimes you just got to see them. And when you're working with an individual that has been through that, and you've never had to experience that because the cookie's just been told that you're going to get your chunk no matter what. It takes a long time to unlearn that stuff or to add in those new things. So I think professionals are set up that way, especially if they're in the medical side of things, because we don't get MBAs. Like, I didn't take one single business class because I was so interested in the sciences, which is brilliant, right? Because you want a doctor that knows what they're doing, right? Like, right. You need to know where the kidney is, right? You need to understand that if you give this chemical, it'll probably kill him if you give this volume. I'm not trying to underplay that, because it is very important, right? But it's like this other stuff. I think the other stuff is what's going to save our industry from these funds and these buy-ups, right? And again, trying to stay away from getting into a rabbit hole.
Let's talk about it for a bit. And the reason I say that is I think definitely more than half of business owners are a little more merit-based. I mean, everything you just said indicates, hey, you're doing your team based on merit, and then that's also helping drive the culture. Everything you just said explains it. What would you say to a business owner? What piece of advice would you give? Someone listen to this, where they're like, well, my employees have been, for lack of better words, indoctrinated by the schooling system, the education system. They're coming out of school, they feel entitled, they don't understand merit-based. What advice would you give these business owners around things like maybe looking for how to hire the right people, or once they're in the team, from your experience, how do you cultivate that? And then at what point do you just cut the line and say, this is the wrong fit? I think this is a super important subject, because I don't think companies can perform at a high level unless they get the team understanding life is based on merit. Life, you don't get handed shit. We don't live in a communist country. It doesn't work that way. So what advice would you give to those people? Hiring, getting them to learn it or understand it, and then when do you let go?
Yeah. I think the very first part of it is you need to be what you expect. Right? Like, I get asked consistently by clients, like, why are you still taking emergency? I say to them, because I want them to know it's not okay to not take emergency. I take the same amount of emergency as all my associate vets, not as my interns. And the reason that we expect the interns to take a higher level is not because we're trying to ride them in the ground. It's that we have 1 year. And when they're done with this year, if they go to work for somebody and they're not very good at emergencies, I didn't do my job. Right, because they need to get over the uncomfortableness of doing emergency work, okay? So those are one thing that we do. But as far as as long as I'm practicing here, does not matter. I'm going to take the same amount of emergency as every other veterinarian, as I just don't want them to believe that it's not okay to not be on emergency. And that's in my mind. It's like the clients deserve that ability. If I didn't want to do emergency, I probably shouldn't have went to vet school, right? Like, so I fight that all the time with them. It's like, like, if you didn't want to do emergency, then, that there's dental school, but even the dentists are on call, right? Like, they're just not as on call as much as we are, right? So then don't be mad about what you chose. Lean into it and wish that you were better at it, right? Like, so I think that's the first thing is you gotta exemplify what you want your people to do from that professional standpoint. I think the other thing is it's one thing to say things, it's another thing to do things. This comes back to it, but sometimes, the young people see me come in and it's like, oh, it's your 4th day and you're here. I'm like, yeah, I'm here because I didn't get all my shit done. And it's not okay. Well, what about your time off? I'm like, I'll get to that tomorrow or tonight, right? Does that make sense? Like, it's very important to me that I'm falling behind. It's a struggle. We all do, right? But it's like, so maybe I'm going to be here a little extra, right? But it's for the better. It's for the betterment of those horses and the people that I'm helping, as well as for our team, right? So I think those are things we try to put across.
It's the same thing I tell my kids all the time. Responsibility before fun. Stop doing the fun thing until you do the thing you're responsible for first. Otherwise, you'll never get to the responsible thing. So
Yeah, yeah. No, and
Yeah.
I love where you're at, Dennis, because that's going to be the next thing that I know came up is in my heritage, and I try to find this in other people's heritage, and it's harder and harder, but it's like I try to listen for things to be like where they understand that once I'm done with the sacrifice, then I'll get the reward. And for me, that was my dad always said was like, well, we'll go to town and have a couple of beers, but not until 6 o'clock when we're done with all the work, right? And if we don't have the work done, well, then we're not going to town. So it's like I wanted to drink a bottle of pop, eat peanuts, and play pool. My dad wanted to have a couple beers. So by God, the post holes got dug, and the fence got in, so I think we try to put that, we work diligently at that, putting that out there that like, there are tons of rewards, but they're not coming without the sacrifice, right? And so I think just pushing that out to them, and I say all the time to them, the sacrifice is worth it, right? I think they've been told that it's not worth it, and I'm like, who the hell got the right to tell them that, right? Like they should not be told that, right? Like if it's not what you're getting, it's what you're becoming along the way, right? Don't you want to be an amazing doctor? I'll say that to them, and you can see them be like, yeah, I do. Well, then you're going to have to bleed, right? Like you're going to have to get good at this, and the way you get good at it is you sacrifice some time, and you sacrifice some of the things you want to do. But it's just been so indoctrinated into them that you shouldn't sacrifice anything, that we're just going to, you can see that I have a manifesting wheel behind me, but even the Indian religion doesn't just say, just sit still and everything will come to you. Well, yeah, you've got to sit still and do the meditating and all the other stuff, but you need to get up and start moving too, right? Like you got to do that, right? And so I think those are things we talk about.
You said there was three. You talked about be what you expect, responsibility before fun, or rewards before sacrifice. And you said there was a third thing.
And then the third thing is like the rewards that come, right? Like how you get rewarded. And when I say that can be in many different ways, right? Like the rewards of the success of your horses doing better, right? Like if you show up and you do your job well, you will see that medicine work better for you, and you'll see the kinds of clients that you want to work for show up more for you, right? Like because we all want the client that's like doesn't talk about money, wants what's best for their horse, and comes back before things are broken and tells everybody how much they love you, right? And so that takes a certain amount of dedication, right? And to do that, you need to see that come about. Usually when they see those three things come together, they'll also see their income come up. They'll see that they're actually doing more work and in the same amount of time. And then they can actually start to work at moving the time commitment down a little bit and keeping it in a space that they feel is sustainable over the long term. And I'm guilty of saying it. I know I'm going to keep saying it is the reason that I expect more is I know there's more in you. You're just not giving it to me. And when I say that, you're not giving it to yourself. But I just happen to be bold enough to say you're not giving it to me, right? But actually what I'm trying to say is you're not giving it to you. And so we'll talk about those kinds of things and in a kind way, as kind as I can be nowadays, because yeah.
I don't know. Nice always translates into nothing inside me cares enough.
Yeah.
And I've always found the fastest way to the target is just to be blunt. Like, if you can't handle the blunt, you can't handle the nice either. So I might as well just tell you like it is.
Yeah. And we have some tremendous people at our place. Like, we're so fortunate right now, just from the standpoint of how that is. But I think that culture is weaved through where we have a lot of engaged individuals. They're accountable. One of the other things I'm guilty of is if I'm talking to you and you were involved in the situation, I feel like you're accountable for something. So you better not tell me nothing. Right? And so I love the ones that are like, yeah, I was doing this, that fell down, the ultrasound machine got broke. I don't care. But you took accountability for it. So now we can move on, right? And no one's going to get their fingers chopped off. Yeah, there's going to be some conversation. We maybe change some things. But if your people aren't accountable, then you don't get the performance, right?
Right.
So, and
love it. So, sorry, I'm going to bring things back to numbers because that was really good. What you just shared was really good advice. What would you say to a business owner who maybe doesn't know their numbers very well, has to say, well, gee, go talk to my accountant about the numbers because, I don't do that, or I'm not good with numbers, or things are okay, or maybe they run away from numbers because they're not comfortable with numbers, which maybe goes back to our education system that doesn't do a very good job of getting people comfortable with numbers. That's a rabbit hole that pisses me off. But what would you say to those business owners, like what, just being blunt?
So sit down and go over your books in your own time. Like Nance and I do this every Saturday and every Sunday. We go through and we write down every single, like what we did for the week. We know what the average transaction was. We started, like those were the basic things that we started with was, what did we do this last week? Nance knows per day. But we would be like, what did we do this last week? Who did what? And just kind of just really just looking at things first. I think that's the big thing is awareness. And this is a coaching thing for sure. Is like, if you write a number down and you focus on it, it's like Henry Ford with the 4 and the 5 and the 6, then you see it come around. I think that's the toughest thing sometimes as veterinarians is just to sit down and be like, but the numbers suck. Well, they're still the numbers, right? Like, so let's look at them. And the only way they're going to unsuck is if we look at them and then start moving them in the direction we need to, right? Because honestly, sometimes they still suck, right? And I'm like, fuck, how's come they have to suck once in a while? Well, because then you're motivated to make them unsuck, right? Like, and so you put things together. And so I think that would be my first thing to say to somebody is like, because I wouldn't do it. I would pray at the end of the year that we had enough money to buy drugs for the spring, right? Because sometimes I'd get excited and buy things. I'd be like, oh, we need this and we need that. And my person that was running the, Brianne was her name, she's like, no, actually we don't, Chad. We don't need that at all. And I'd be like, but we made so much money this year. And she's like, yeah, but it's going to suck all spring because we have to fund the $300,000 up front to get ready. So if you spend $100,000 on this, we're going to be 100,000 short, and then I'm going to be running around trying to figure out how to magically make money up here, right? But if you don't look at things, you don't know that, right? And I think one of the other things that's tough is to look at your people and be like 0 to 5. What's their number? As far as like if you had cultural fit, or like if you were hiring all over again and you could do it exactly the way you wanted to play Monopoly, would that person be on your team?
Yeah.
Good question.
It's a tough thing to say, but if that person or that worked for the culture that you had a year ago or 2 years ago, okay. But if you're looking for that new culture, then either they're going to change or they just don't come along. And a lot of times I've been guilty of it in the past. It's like we just kind of try to work our way through it. And then when it didn't work anymore, then it just blew up in my face pretty big, right? That hurt way more than the pain on the, like, I don't know. This is an old Jim Rohn saying, right? Like there's two kinds of pain and you're not going to get away from them, right? And we've been talking about the whole thing is the pain of discipline or the pain of regret, right? Like you get all of life. That summarizes everything in my life as far as how it goes. And so I would talk to that person if they were new in business. I'd be like, you're either going to get the discipline pain, which means maybe you have to do a few more nights of emergency, or maybe someone has to answer the telephone a little bit more because you let somebody go in your admin, or you have a veterinarian that's not producing, or they aren't nice to your people and they're shitting all over your culture, and even though they produce well, you're like, oh, I need their numbers. Well, actually, are they worth it? I'm not saying I'm going to make that decision for them, but I think you have to ask yourself those questions, and those are the discipline questions, right? Because they suck, right? But the regret is on the other end when you're talking to your clients and they're like, yeah, when that veterinarian comes out, I call somebody else. I use your competition because I don't want them on emergency, or I won't use them if you're not here. You don't see those. Those are the little things that you're just sometimes not paying attention to. Or the person that just at the front desk is like, well, we can't book that person in. Well, why can't we? Well, because there's 10. I'm like, well, that client needs to be seen. So we're going to figure out how they're going to get in here, right? Like, it's not an option that we're saying no today because it's an emergency, right? Like, and I'm just using that as an example. That's not happening at our place, right? Like, I just, so I'm straight up about that. That's what I mean by we have some beautiful people and some beautiful culture right now, because our veterinarians are the kind that anybody can go out and see somebody on emergency. Our admin team answers the telephone and they're like, this needs to be seen. So they come to the back and they talk to people and they figure out ways to get to yes, right? Like, I think that's another thing is like, we're developing an engaged, accountable performance culture. And I think if I come back to it, there's two words that describe that if we get down to it. Are you a yes person or a no person? Because yes, people figure shit out. No people are looking for a way out, right? Those are things that I would say to somebody that's new. And this is a Tony Robbins thing. It's like the other thing too that I've done a lot of is, and why I think for both of you having been in businesses, is like Tony always says, find somebody that's doing what you want to do, and then just go copy them, right? Like it's like, so for me, it's like one of the things I did is I went and talked to the practice manager, like she's the medical director or like the practice manager for this big practice in Kentucky. It's called Rood and Riddle. There's 62 veterinarians. They're the largest private equine hospital in the world. And she's like, yeah, we're never selling to corporate. We're making so much money. Why would we want to give it to corporate? Right? You know, like, and so go talk to those people that you want to be like, right? And then see where you're at, and don't be afraid to ask to copy their things, right? Like I've stolen so many things from other businesses and other veterinarians that now I give them credit, but I sure as hell use them, you know. Sometimes I'll even take credit for it, right? So I don't know.
And people are doing it to you too. So
yeah. And yeah, so I would say that to another person that was getting started is like to do that, you know, and it's very cliche again too, but it's like part of the reason that the coaching program works the way I like it is like we're cut from a similar cloth. And so I say to people, like, want to find those people that you resonate with, right? You know, good, bad, or indifferent. You need some people around you that will challenge you. But I think that if you're too much at odds, like if you don't have something that you agree on inside of there, like a band of like, I don't know, 50, 60%, how do you expect to get any progress? Because you're going to be fighting each other all the time.
Right.
So I think that's the other thing is finding that mentor that you can work with in business or mentorship program.
Yeah, love it. When you're talking there, you're making me think about about knowing the numbers. And when I meet people just out living life and say they're a business owner, if I ask them, because it's in my nature, I always ask some kind of question around numbers, right? Like what's your margin, or what are your inventory turns, or without them divulging something they don't want to divulge, but I'll ask some questions around numbers and then I'll dig deeper with those questions. And often they can't answer the questions because they don't know the numbers. And then they'll say, oh, you got to, talk to my accountant. And that's such a scary thing because, as you said earlier, if you're not looking at a number, then you're not focused on how to improve that number, then you're not going to improve. And then you'll talk to people that maybe haven't worked at a certain executive job, or they sold their business like 10 years ago. And you ask them questions about numbers and they can like rattle them off. And I'm like, that tells me they looked at their numbers every freaking day or week and they still remember them from 10 years ago. I mean, I used to be a buyer at Sport Check a long time ago. Like we're talking 25, 30 years ago. And I could still write down and tell you all the margin percents and the revenues by category, brand. I still know most of those. And the only reason I know them, it has nothing to do with any kind of photographic memory or anything. It has to do with I looked at them every single day trying to figure out how to make them better. If you're a business owner and you're looking at your numbers all the time and all the key numbers, then you're going to do something about it. So if someone's asking a question, you don't know those numbers, that says you're underperforming. There's a problem.
Your headspace is driven by your nervous system, right? Like I believe what you just said. And coming back to that conditioning that's happened for 20 years since the time they were 5 until they were 26, as far as like just for a professional. And I don't know, we can go in different directions, but I can only talk about what I know, right? And so for me, I think that reconditioning that nervous system, understanding those things, it takes some work and the person needs to be open to it. I think that's another thing we look for in people too, is like, how's their nervous system wired? And we talked about the yes versus the no's. If they've been wired as a no person their entire life, you got a big old battle ahead of you, right? And so I'm going to turn my head on those. I'm the no's for me are like, we're going to be out sooner than we're going to be in, right? Even if they are talented, because the no people, you got to get past the no. And that's saying yes to the numbers, understanding where they're at. When you work for your clients, whatever your competitive industry is, when you talk to them, they're like, oh, I was just at Spruce Meadows and I just watched, I don't know, let's just say Ian Miller, he just jumped 1.4 meters. They know the number, right? Like the competitors do. And they know, like, so it should be no different for us on our side. It's like, I'm $1 million vet. You don't have to tell people that. But if you were in a conversation, you could still have that comfort, I guess, right? I don't know. And
yeah.
yeah, you know, and understanding your percentages, those kinds of things I think are nice, you know, and I know when I wasn't talking about it, it was because I didn't know. And when I did finally find out, I was like super disappointed, especially when I was jumping a meter and everyone else was jumping a meter 40. And I was like, fuck, this sucks. You know what I mean? Like, so you kind of, right? So sometimes if you're just reading your own newspaper and you're just jumping a meter, you're like, well, I'm doing so good, even though everyone's jumping a meter 40 beside you, but you never went to look, so you don't really care.
Right. But that leads to, sorry, I'm going to finish that story that you just said, because that leads to yesterday, because it wasn't that long ago, like, you know, maybe 3 months ago, give or take. I think you called me or sent me a text, or it wasn't even a scheduled session. You sent me a text or called me or something and just said, holy shit, we just had our best month like ever. And we're not talking about revenue, we're talking about profit, right? Pure performance. And you're like, I like this. I want more of these. So yeah, that's everything you just talked about leads to that, right? That's how that happens. I remember that because you were pretty jacked. You jumped like 1.6 meters.
Yes. So at our place, there's like this silent thing that whenever someone sees me do it, they're like, they just realize they just killed it, right? And it's like that. It's like this. Like if they just see me, whenever they see me do this and there's no conversation, it's just like you just hammered it. It's almost like it's an unsaid thing that if Chad does that in front of you, you're the god, right? Like, and I don't do it ever. Well, I do it periodically for myself, but mostly it's always for like a horseman. Like when I'm in the barn and they're like, you won't believe Dr. Hewlett, I just did this. And I'm just like, yeah, right? Like this. Or when our people are doing something and horses worked out, it's worked out really well. It's like, yeah, good for you.
Yeah,
right?
that's
So,
awesome.
It's that sharing in other people's glory. It's not winning in spite
Yeah.
of somebody, it's winning with somebody. And it's so much
Yeah.
more fun to win with somebody than in spite of
Yeah.
somebody. Right? Like
Yeah.
it's like even playing games with the kids. They win, I want to authentically celebrate the win with them. It's a sign of more maturity when it comes to actual competition. When you're the one that celebrates when someone else loses so you win, it's not nearly as much fun as celebrating with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And
I
when
think
you
that's
get
a
to
big
celebrate with staff and you get to celebrate with your clients, they realize that you have probably as much skin in the game, if not more than they do, because of your simple joy of watching them win.
Yeah. So true.
Sorry, I
Yeah,
cut you off
100%.
there.
Nope. Sorry about my emotional status
No.
there, but it's like it's like it's celebrating the accomplishments with our people too. That's been a lot of fun. As we see things come up in our group, then we see the overall performance has just gotten better as we are able to see these little victories for our people inside of what they're doing, right? Like what's good for the bee is good for the hive, right? I think there's definitely a part of that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, we definitely understand what you're saying there and the emotion behind it, because that's exactly what we do for a living. So we totally get it. 100%.
I think one more thing is, as far as like, I think would be fun to put into this conversation is I get asked a lot about retirement because I'm 58, I'm 57, and I'm going to be 58.
That's young.
on
For the
November
record,
17th.
that's young. That's young for the record. But keep
Yeah.
going.
So-
Keep talking, but that's young.
But I get, yeah, but I get the conversation all the time because I have wrinkles and I have gray hair and I'm balding in the back, and they know when you talk to me, you're like, that guy's traveled, that guy's, he's looked at a lot of horses. He's done a lot of shit. But it's like, they say, what are you going to do when you retire? And I'm like, I'm not thinking about retirement. I think that's the other thing that's interesting about business is, yeah, we're building an asset. Someday it's going to get liquidated. You know, I'm really hoping that our young veterinarians will be a big group and they'll come together and they'll appreciate ownership in a bigger thing and take this further than Nancy and I have taken it and all those sort of things. I really want all that. But at the end of the day, it's like, if you spent your whole life just in business, just trying to kill it so that you could retire, I get that people do that. And I'm not criticizing them. I just don't know that that's for me. I'm not saying that's wrong to do that because we're going to enjoy our retirement. But I've almost found that being in this deal, it's like there's so many things that we want to reach for now. Like we're just in the middle of trying to qualify for this next level of risk that a 58-year-old doesn't take. And the reason that I'm open to take that kind of risk is because I feel like I'm playing with a playbook that puts me in a spot, puts us as a team in a spot to be like, yeah, because there is no reward without risk, right? Like it's the same as the sacrifice. I think risk and sacrifice are super similar, and you can, they're one or the other. So if I want this next reward, I can't just be like, well, I'm not willing to take any risk, because then I'm not going to get that reward, because I can't go to that level if I'm not willing to put some things on the line or put some effort into it. And I think coaching and the way you've put this together, though, Greg, makes it easier for an old guy to want to still keep going for it. I guess that's what I'm saying. I don't know. Does that make sense? Like, then you're not, because, like, what's the saddest thing in the world is to watch a person with no purpose.
Yeah.
And I think that's my fear of being retired is like, not that I couldn't make a purpose. I'm pretty sure I could make a purpose out of playing golf every single day. I could do that.
Right.
But is that going to change my industry? Maybe a little bit, but I still need to be involved in the horses and the veterinary medicine if I'm going to change the industry that I love. And it is my business too. Like, how do I I'm getting pretty philosophical.
Just to maybe clarify what you were just saying, I think some of the point was, if you've got a good predictable system in place and a playbook, like you're saying, it really starts to remove the fear of the risk at, your age, which again, I'm the same age, so we're young, but at your age, is it worth taking that step or that risk? Well, a lot of that gets removed because you're saying you got the playbook and the predictability, and that's a huge part of the factor. It allows you to make yourself younger again and kind of go for another thing, right? Without risking retirement. So I think is another way to say that, and I love it. It's a great message.
I personally believe the entire concept of retirement is a scam. This idea that I'm supposed to do something for a period of time, suddenly have it ripped away from me and go on and enjoy my life. I don't know if you want to see a miserable male, you get a guy who's got a lot of money and a lot of free time and nothing to do. You find somebody who's excessively miserable. My grandfather was forced to retire by the family, meaning the family paid for his bills, but he's been active into his 90s, filling his time, right? If I take a look at business in general, there's different kinds of games you can play. And usually the game you're playing, let's talk about a board game. There's a board game you're going to play where you're playing by the rules. And then there comes the board game that you're playing where you're understanding how the others are playing the game, and now you're playing two completely different games. And then you get to the point where you have played so many times, you already know what the other players are going to do before they do it. You're pre-predicting where the game is going to go, and you're telling me that at that point, when I know the game better than everybody else, I'm supposed to walk away?
Yeah.
No, I'm gonna keep playing, man. Like I'm gonna start showing you guys the hints and the tricks on how to play this thing and how to get to that level. And I'm gonna celebrate with 4 or 5 of you who understand this, not just flip the table, say it's over. And
I love where you're at. I love that conversation, Dennis, because that's how I feel. I was like, yeah, I would love to just stay at this for 10 or 15 years and helping those individuals crush through, like these veterinarians come through and do these things and add to the industry as private owners, right? Like I think that would be super fun, right? And to be a part of that, right? It's so true. My dad's 80, he's 82 and runs 250 mama cows, right? And when I was home, he's like, I don't know, maybe I should slow down. I was like, nope, don't slow down at all. Like, you're out there enjoying yourself. He gets up at the same time every day. You probably heard me talk about it because I talk about my dad a lot.
He has a purpose.
But it's just, yes, that's what I keep trying to say to him. I was like, what purpose would you have if you stopped the cows? Because they don't like to travel. So it's like, well, keep raising cows and making hay and drinking 2 beers at the end of the day. Like, once you know you've put your time in.
I think it's incredibly relevant. There's so many people I can think of in my own circle who are older than I am, who do decide to give up the game, and they waste away and they die. And you got guys that are the same age that have not given up the game, and they're not young, but they seem young. They act young. They participate. They're engaging in conversation. They're a lot of fun to have. Personally, the whole concept of retirement is so foreign to me growing up on a farm. I don't know why people try to celebrate it. Like, just keep pushing through, build people up, enjoy it. I think that's the most powerful thing anybody can do who builds a business. Just keep going.
Yeah.
Hey, I got a question. Before I ask the question, I have a quick answer to what your dad could do that could keep him really busy. He could figure out how to get cows to stop farting.
Yeah, that carbon's a problem. That carbon's a problem.
Anyway, so my question's going to be,
More farting. I
well,
demand more farting.
Even though those beef cows are sequestering so much carbon, every time they fart, they put some more into the environment.
back to our education system. So what would you say to, I'm going to say a vet clinic owner, but then I'm going to expand that and say any clinic owner, because clinic owners, for the most part, you've already mentioned it, they get into helping people medicine or helping animals medicine, etc., and they, that's what they're getting good at. But to help more animals, help more horses, help more people, whatever kind of clinic you own, the clinic needs to be successful and thrive so you can bring on more vets and help more animals and do it in a way that, if you're good at helping animals or people, the business has to survive so you can help those people. So I know you're passionate about, we'll say, small business owner, vets or clinics surviving versus the funds buying them out, because that tends to water down the level of the service. Plus, small business needs to survive for the community to thrive. What would you say to those business owners where maybe they're, like you had said back when, you're just getting by, oh, can I make payroll? Can I make my truck payment? Like, what would you say to those business owners today to get out of their own way and not just survive, because I don't even like that word, but thrive?
So I think the first things that I would say for sure is get a coach. Like our deal started, and I'm not saying this because I'm on your podcast. I'm saying this because this is what I would do if I was talking to somebody. I'd be like, get a coach, somebody that interview some people, find that fit, so that you can get that reflection from the outside. And I say this all the time, that I'm like, everybody knows who Tiger Woods is. Well, Tiger Woods had a coach his entire career. He probably still sees someone, right?
Had 11 coaches at one point.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So he's arguably the greatest golfer of all time, as far as how things are. I just happen to be a Tiger Woods fan, right? But he's arguably the greatest golfer of all time, and he was never without a coach. And like you said, oftentimes many coaches, even his caddy, I don't know, you listen to some of the caddy stories, it's kind of interesting how that all came together. So there was somebody on the outside that could see the label on the jar, right? Because one of the things that I find is the hardest thing, and I love this saying, is it's pretty damn hard to read the label on the jar when you're on the inside. Right? And so you need that outside reflection, and that helps a bunch to start with. That would be the number one thing. And then obviously I'm very biased, but I would pick somebody, going back on it. I didn't do this at the beginning, but I didn't pick somebody with the numbers, right? Like somebody that was quite as honest as you are. And I think sometimes because that's not what people are looking for, they're looking for somebody that can tell them all the magic formulas, right? That's what I was after, is tell me what I need to say and how do I do this and what kind of magical marketing budget or sales budget are we going to put together, versus, no, let's just sit down and just look at where you're at right now. Oh shit, you're making 2% profit and you're not making anything after you actually pay yourself for the way you should be paid. No one wants to hear that. But that's probably what you need to hear, is that, and you need to hear it from an outside source who's an expert at it, who's run a business before. I think those would be the first steps. And then understanding that if you pick the right coach and you do the things that you're coached to do, things will come along, right? And how I'd phrase this to people is well, you picked a school, didn't you? I picked Iowa State University because they had a good reputation of making great veterinarians.
Nice.
So that's where I wanted. Obviously I grew up in Iowa, but I also knew that it was a great veterinary school that I was going to. So I was going to get educated in what I wanted to do. And I think that's what I would say to young business people is really do some research on it. You're selecting which school you're going to go to. And if I was growing up in America and I was going to be a football player and I wanted to play football for one of those universities, going back in the years, I'd Alabama, right? I'm not an Alabama fan, didn't grow up there, but looking at his program, he called the process or whatever, and how he did things, incredible, right? But that's just based on his philosophy or the coach's philosophy. So if we come back to that, I think the business coach is the same, right? And how that comes together.
It's interesting. I know
I
this is
did.
totally off topic. It's interesting that Nick Saban, so who you're talking about with Alabama, it's interesting that he's one of the first to say he doesn't like this, say players getting paid and then the portal and all that stuff, like turning the college into like the pros. He's packed it in. He doesn't like that. That goes to show you he
Yeah.
cared about his players and the process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
College sports is college sports, right? You want to be a professional, get through college first, or don't go to
Yeah.
college, right? But let's don't ruin the university system with
Yeah.
that. I'm gonna I'm gonna show my cards there, but I believe the same way. It's just like
Me too.
you probably went in Calgary and watched when they would have the juniors in the
Holt.
hockey deal. Calgary, this has been several years ago, but I just remember
Memorial Cup.
watching those kids play. But more, yeah, like
Yeah.
you're watching them play, and they're not making a penny, right? Like they're not making a single dime to be in that deal, but they're playing hockey for what it was meant to be, which is I want to be the best that I can be at that game. And if nobody pays me, I don't really care because I'm doing what I love, right? I think there's something to be said for that. And I think Saban was able to dig that out of people. And I think
Yeah.
that would be the way I would pick the coaching program is not, obviously I want to be successful and make money, but at the end of the day, I feel like you want our business to thrive because you see that as the best way to provide service for those horses. At
Yep.
the
Exactly.
core of it is like good business should provide great service to the industry that it's serving. And I think
Yep.
that's how I would pick the coach with the systems in place.
And we want you to be able to beat your neighbor.
Yeah, we all want. I got no problem from that. Some of my best lessons have been learned after I got my ass whooped, right? Like, yeah, that's when you get better sometimes, right?
After 2 left hooks, you should learn to duck. If not, you
Yeah,
deserve the third one.
yeah, yeah. It's time to go back and learn how to take that.
Chad, thank you. Very much appreciate
Yeah,
you joining us. I think there's some great conversation there. I think there's some really good lessons to be learned. I think you brought a lot of really good perspective to being a business owner. And I think you brought a different perspective about culture. And I think that was really key because I think 99% of business owners you ask about culture would have given a very different answer. And personally, I'm very much a fan of what you describe culture as there. So I love that. I thought that was good, insightful. Thank you very much.
yeah. Thanks for having me. It was a very enjoyable day. Just like talking with your friends. So yeah, telling stories. So
Our podcast producer likes to ask a couple of off the cuff questions for the audience to get to know us. So the first question is, what's the most unexpected lessons you've learned from a failure in your business? Chad.
unexpected lessons. One of the toughest ones that we've learned is that profit doesn't always equal cash flow.
Good one.
And yeah, like healthy profit, you have to be careful because it comes back to like the healthy profit isn't always healthy cash flow. You can have both, but you have to be. That's hurt us a few times, right? Like I think that's yeah.
They're two different
That
conversations
comes back
and you
that
have to be aware of both. I love it. Yeah,
yeah.
it's good. Love it. Dennis.
It's not very sexy. It's not very sexy, but it is.
No, but it's
It,
real.
I would say for me, the one that hit the hardest was always revenue doesn't equal profit, which is similar to yours. Like you can go and you can sell a lot of crap and still go home absolutely broke and not know why. And I've been there. Like it's not fun to get that statement and you're like, why is my bank account so empty when I sold so much, right? And yet everywhere around me, everybody preaches revenue, revenue, revenue. And I'm like, yeah, until you get kicked in the teeth with no money, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unexpected doesn't mean fun lessons, by the way. It just means unexpected.
Yeah.
For me, for sure, it's as a business owner, you go through a tough time, like a real tough time. The unexpected huge lesson that you should never forget your whole life is be prepared to make really difficult decisions before, like when you're still in good times. When things are good, be prepared to make really difficult decisions. Don't wait for things to be bad to make them. Huge lesson there. Massive. Biggest lesson for sure for me. Okay, another question. What's a dream vacation spot that's totally offbeat, and what wild activity would you do there? Chad.
So vacation spot favorite of all time is Hawaii. And it's Kauai of the islands. Like I like Hawaii in general,
I've
but
heard
Kauai
that.
would be my first choice. The reason being is it's super, like all of Hawaii is pretty chill, but Kauai is very chill. Like there's only 60,000 people there. When Nance and I went there the first time, We just did some, like a bunch of hiking, and there's so many different mini sections. Like one section's arid, one section's really rainy, some's flat, some's volcanic, right? Like there's just all these different things about Kauai too. I think all the islands have these different little climates, but I think that was the funnest thing about that was there. And just, I like that vacation because you don't really need anything once you're there. The wildest thing, I jumped off of a cliff into the water.
So back to your Ian Miller reference in horses, was it 1 meter or was it like 100 meters?
It's about 10,
Oh.
which is enough for me. Yeah. I'm not terrified of heights, but I don't
Celebrate
need to,
them.
I experience them when I need to, and then in that situation I did, yeah.
I've got a lot of respect for bulls. Doesn't mean I need to ride one. Same idea.
I can just I can watch it and have all the respect in the world. Yeah. Yeah.
Dennis, how about you?
Man. The only place I've really wanted to go for the last while has been basically like sandals ever since watching Couples Retreat. I'm like, that'd be a lot of fun to go out there and check something like that out. And then I said to my wife, instead of us paying to go there, I'm just going to go get a job out there so I can vacation for free while I work, because somebody has to work the place while everybody else is on vacation. But as far as wild activities, I don't know, man. I've given up on
of the
like,
island.
Don't go to the left.
No.
Right, that one. That's such a good movie. Anyway,
It's a
as
great
far as
movie.
wild activities, if you'd have asked me that 20 years ago, the answer would be a whole lot different now. Now there's not a lot
It's
of wild
time to show the
activities
donkey
in my
the
life.
snake.
Let's just go enjoy it. There you go.
I'm going to say mine is Sandra and I went to a remote area in Costa Rica, the Osa Peninsula, where we stayed in a wood casita with no walls, no power, no light, no nothing, which was really cool, right on the beach. Amazing. One of the wild things we did was an overnight safari I'm not a big humidity person. We did it in like insane humidity, and I literally fucking thought I was gonna die. To the point where, anyway, I thought I was dead. It was 2 days of hiking and freaking crazy humidity, and in hindsight, great story. It was really cool, but going through it, hated it. I'll tell you real quick. So exactly halfway through the hike, there's a little stream. So it's where you meet us going to the destination. You bump into the people hiking back the next day from the destination. I was so exhausted and overheated. I stripped down to my underwear, lied in the creek right on the path, and like 20 or 30 people had to basically walk over me or around me doing the starfish in my underwear in a creek. Sandra's like, you should probably move up like 20 feet. I'm like, fuck that. I'm exhausted. I was so exhausted from the heat. Where we parked our truck was a 45-minute hike to the start of the trail. And when we got there, I'm like, I'm done. I want to turn around. I don't even want to do this thing. And it was like a 12-hour hike in. And in 45 minutes, before we even hit the start of the trail, I'm like, I'm done. And she's like, no, we got to go. I'm like, oh, God. No, we flew back. It was right out of a movie like 7 Days, 7 Nights. Harrison Ford, that little shitty plane he had. Remember that movie? I don't know if you saw that, but so we hike in. And I'm like, I'm not going back. I'm not going back. There's no way. I'll die. So we hired a little 5-seater airplane taxi for like $40. Best $40 I ever spent in my whole life. And he flew us back. It's great. But the plane was tied together with like duct tape and freaking twine. But I felt safer with that than hiking back. Yeah, fun. Okay. Thanks, Chad. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the More Profit, Less Stress podcast. If you liked what you heard, be sure to subscribe or follow on your favorite podcast platform and leave a comment or review if you're feeling generous. To learn more about us and what we do, check out our website. Until next time, take care.